Welcome to Masters of Momentum. I am your host, Sharika Hines.
And I'm your co-host, Roquita Coleman-Williams.
And on today's podcast, we are discussing post-election recovery and resilience. And we are thrilled to have with us none other than the Carolyn Hardy. How are you, Carolyn?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being with us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, gosh, a little bit. Been in Memphis all my life. Was born right across the bridge, but lived there for 1 month. So I've been in Memphis forever. Graduated from high school here, attended the University of Memphis. I'm an undergraduate in accounting, my master's in management. My entire career's been here. I was with Smuckers for about 20 years. Spent a little time in technology and then went on to Coors. And I was their vice president of operations. Stayed there for 5 years, or close to 5 years, and then bought the facility back in 2006, and then sold it in 2011, and sold it to my friend. We became friends after we were competitors. That was good, and then went into real estate development. We developed container yards, did that from 2006 until I sold that in 2021. Started a beverage company, started as an investor, and then acquired it in 2021, and spent the last 4 years pretty much, finding how do we create opportunities in a retail space that's not accustomed to dealing with women and minorities. Most people aren't aware that when you look at the beverage brands that are sold to the major organizations like Coke, Pepsi, Coors, so on, most of those brands were male-produced brands. They were not started by a minority or a woman. So those billion-dollar brands like Buy that sold to the majors, none of those brands were started by us.
Wow.
Now, we were consumers, and we helped them get that $1 billion for the brand. But we didn't benefit from it.
Wow.
No.
And we have that brand
We
on
do.
set with us today.
And we
of
love it.
course.
We actually drink this.
And
My
it
pantry's
is-
full of
We
it.
got our subscription at home. We get our box. My son's an athlete,
Yes.
and we make sure that he is always hydrated, and he has less hydration issues today drinking this water than we've had
Well,
in the
it's
past.
amazing. One of the challenges that I see with our health is that we're not aware of the negative things that we do to contribute to our health outcomes. Example, you take the products we've been feeding our kids for 50 years, the ones with the sugar, and we say that, whether it's Gatorade, Powerade, whatever, that sodium that's in there, that's caffeine's in there, bad for your teeth. And then all of a sudden, everybody is what they call, pre-diabetic? That's because all the things that we've given them over the years has caused them to be pre-diabetic. Our products has proven that through science that, we can boost your energy. We can do the same thing that the other products do for you, but without any of the sodium, without the caffeine, without the sugars. Now, you don't get any better than that. Our product only has 20 calories versus normally you have 200 calories. You have 55 grams of sugar in a traditional soda or one of the other products that you give for athletes. 55 grams. We have 4. 55 grams of sodium.
Wow.
We have 0.
And I'm going to tell you, while we are not here to talk about and promote
I know,
water,
I
I
know.
just want
You
you all
guys
to
got
know
me going.
that I actually love this. And I like the nightlife one. It's called Pregame and Recover. I'm not doing any pre-gaming. I just use this as hydration. What I have found is I drink it before I go to bed at night too.
Yes.
No, not too close because you're going to be up going to the bathroom all the time because it does hydrate you.
Yes.
But what I found is it makes me rest better.
Yeah.
I don't even think that's supposed to be one of the benefits. Maybe not. I don't know. But it does help me rest better. And it's the first thing that I drink when I wake up in the morning,
we go
too.
to USA Track and Field events, and we ship our products there.
Wow.
We send it to competition, and our products will be there with the other sponsor, which is the real sponsor, which is Gatorade. Okay, they're the big boys. The athletes really prefer our products.
Wow.
Because it does not have the sugars and caffeines. And when they run and they're that intense, and when you have a very intense workout, like your personal workout, your knees, your joints, something's going to hurt. And that's because of inflammation. You need something that is all natural, that's all healthy to help reduce that inflammation. H2 is your answer. it will reduce that inflammation, stop everything from locking up. And that locking up is swelling at the joints. So you want that inflammation to go down. So athletes will drink our products because they know it won't be long before the locking up stops. So when we go to track and field events, we actually hand the runner, and we'll say, okay, take these 3, back to your room. We say, drink one now, drink one after your hot shower. Then we'll say, drink one the next morning. Typically, they have another race the next morning. And they'll come back and say, oh my God, I have no issues. What happened? What did you do to me?
Wow.
And
When you start thinking about wellness
Yes.
in the context of reconciliation and resilience,
Yes.
wellness is key to that.
Wellness is key.
How do you continue to navigate these big challenges that require more of your time, that require stamina? As a business
right.
leader,
That's right.
I know that you know about the stamina that it takes in order to build a business.
A lot of times when you're nervous and life is throwing you a curveball, you tend to make bad choices.
Yes.
You eat the wrong things because you don't have time.
Yeah.
But you're so worried, you do nervous eating. It's nervous energy. So to your point, right now is a time when we need to think about our health choices because we're just starting the turbulent times. I heard you guys say that. This is the beginning, it's not the end. But I heard you ask a question, how do we get through this? I think the thing you have to think about is that the American public overall is smart. Okay, they made some bad choices in the last 6 months, but in general, on the long run, it's like the stock market. In the long run, they're going to make good decisions. Okay, all these things that were told to them last year that caused them to make the decisions that they made, that grocery prices were going to go down, that the middle class was going to resurge. They're going to see in a very short period of time that egg prices at $6 just don't get it. And these $6 egg prices don't just affect that person who's on the end of the economic spectrum. It affects that middle class person. If you got to pay $6 for eggs and you're buying 2 dozen eggs every day, your gas prices are going up, bread prices are ridiculous. That group that voted for this gentleman, they may not be able to do anything about him, but their challenge comes in November because that'll be a new group of people saying, okay, look at the promises that were made in 2024. Have you delivered on those promises? We've got to make sure that people are listening and seeing with their eyes wide open, not with just their hearts. Because I think they voted last year with their heart in terms of what they wanted the world to look like, not what the world's going to look like. I'll give you another example. Look at the stock market. Yesterday, I almost hit 45,000 again. Okay. Yep. Did that benefit the middle income of the person at the very end of the income spectrum? No, not at all. That top 5% still benefit as usual, which is they don't care what eggs cost. They don't care if eggs cost $10 or $12. I'm going to be honest with you, most of them don't even know what eggs cost.
Right.
Yeah, because they're not going to the store.
They're not going to the store.
Right.
Well, they don't eat at home very much. So the way you get through it, you have to say, okay, I heard someone say earlier that you've been here before. You've been through negative times before. Yes, we have. You'll find that most minorities have been through some type of negativity over the last 10, 20 years. So this isn't new for them. It's just a difference than it was, but it still affects them the same way. They still are the have-nots. They're not the haves. They're still not the middle class. They're still, when they take away these programs have been taken away before, sadly. The ones who need the most will find a way. And I will tell you, I've learned over time, the ones who have the least tend to be the smartest. They've learned how to navigate life in very complex times. I'll tell you a little story. When I owned the brewery years ago, the 1,300,000 square foot monster, I used to call it a paperweight too, okay? The thing was so big. We had a utility bill that was like $300,000-$400,000 a month, per month, okay? And I did not know how to navigate that type of problem. So we didn't have the money to pay MLG&W, the entire amount. And they were threatening to turn off our utilities and all this stuff. And I've never had my utilities threatened. No, not as an adult. No, my parents may have had their utilities threatened. I'm sure they had that all the time because I can remember a lot of times growing up being in the dark, okay? But as an adult, it never happened. And so I had this young lady come to me. She was one of my clerks. And she said, Carolyn, you and Bernie don't know how to deal with this utility bill? No. So we've never had this happen. She said, let me explain to you how to deal with MLG&W. We had a clerk tell us
Wow.
how to manage. We're looking at her like, are you serious?
Yeah.
She said, no, you go pay them something.
Wow.
You decide what that something is and what you're comfortable with. And she said, you pay them something, they won't shut it off. I said, are you serious? She said, I have lived this way for years. She said, I pay them something and they leave me alone.
Wow.
So we went, talked to them, paid them something, okay? And they left our utilities on.
Well, I think it is with this level of expertise that I'd like to go into our next question. You've obviously, given your history and your experience that you shared with us, had several successful businesses, sold them all, and now you're in your new venture. How can business leaders effectively manage this uncertainty and maintain organizational stability in the aftermath of elections?
You know, I think they're going to have to keep their focus on their goals.
Okay.
Their business goals should not change. The way they go about it may change slightly, okay? They're going to need to be more persistent than ever. I heard someone say that last year, and I really get it now. If you're chasing a retailer, trying to get into that door, you need to continue to help them understand why your brand is the right brand to be on his shelf.
Right.
Regardless of what anyone's saying, regardless of what's going on politically, doesn't matter. Help them understand what is your brand proposition.
Okay.
What consumers are you going to touch? Why does the consumer want your products? Keep saying that message over and over again. And you know what? When you go to those meetings, act like those negative forces aren't existing. Okay? Act like everything is the same as it was before. Because if you bring up that negativity, you give them the right to bring it up. But if I keep it out of the conversation, then I get to keep it out of the conversation. I get to give you my narrative, which is what I want to do. My 15 minutes, because typically when you're pitching, you got a good 15 minutes, that's it. I don't need to talk about the fact that there's a bunch of executive orders, that DE&I is being threatened and there's lawsuits going around. 15 minutes, you learn nothing about my brand.
Right.
So I need you to listen to my message, and I need to stay on point. I need to carry myself in a way that I'm not showing at all that these decisions are affecting me. I need you to look at me as a top professional that I am, not someone that now the concern they will have is that becomes an excuse why you're not servicing me anymore.
Right.
Okay? I want you to understand that regardless of what's going on right now, I'm going to take care of you. You know, we went to a trade show a couple of weeks ago, and I got hit with a ton of orders. I was there at the show, and I saw no other minority brands there. There were no other minority brands at the show, and that always disappoints me. Now, I actively look for other minority brands, and I go shake their hands and introduce myself. Just let them know, we're in the house.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay? But you've got to keep that positive attitude. Do not let what's going on right now change your messaging, because that may be the excuse why they pass on you. Okay? I'm not going to let today be the excuse why you not accept my brand.
That sounds like, because I was going to ask you a follow-up question to that about what can leaders say to their teams to keep them motivated, but it sounds to me that it's the same internal message as it is externally.
My team has been working so hard. First thing, celebrate small wins.
Yes.
Okay? Like when I went to the trade show, the team asked me, said, well, did we get sales from it? I said, you know what? We got some really good sales from it. See, I like the positive. Here's the types of sales that we got. And don't just focus on the dollar sales, focus on the repeat business. It covered the cost of the trade show, because we always say trade shows has an ROI. If it doesn't meet the ROI, we don't go back again. Okay? Well, it met the ROI. It actually exceeded the ROI. Then I listed the opportunities that we have. I didn't say anything about DE&I. I didn't say anything about executive orders. I said, here's where we're playing. Then I gave an update on the projects that I told you about last year that we're working on and why we've not moved forward, because those things could scare them. That, wait a minute, you said we were going to have this business in January. I said, well, the fires in LA, which none of us have any control over, is impacting our ability to move forward with those accounts. And they said, oh, and I explained to them why. And so you have to be positive. The leader has to be positive, and then it'll roll down to the people.
I think I wanted to make sure that we extract from what you said for our listening audience and our viewing audience is number one, she said, be transparent.
Yes.
Right.
Communicate information. You need to
Yes.
cascade information in your organization and be honest about if there is a shift and a pivot, be honest about that because employees are already talking about it
Right.
anyway. So
Right.
you want to quiet the silence. And one of the things that we know in doing crisis management is he who tells the story first controls the narrative. Tell the
Yes.
story to your employees before they hear it off the street.
You know, interesting, in 2020 when COVID hit, our MRO company, our sales went to zero. I mean, it dropped to where there was no orders. And we have 10 employees at that company. And everybody was walking around. They walked by my door and they would look in. They would be nervous. Like, excuse me, is this the day that, you're going to say, don't come back till I call you, okay?
Right.
And so I saw the nervousness of the people, and I finally said, hey, come on in, have a seat, and bring your tea with you. And I'm doing this on purpose, okay? I've got to show that I'm not nervous. I said, look, there's a lot going on right now that none of us have any control over. I said, we're all concerned. I'm concerned about our family's health. I'm concerned about your health. And we were in a business that you could not work remote. So my team was at work, okay?
Right.
And so I said, you know what? I said, I have one basic rule on business. And they said, what's that? I said, if you don't see me worry, you don't have to worry.
Set expectations.
That's exactly
right.
I said, so if I'm walking around telling jokes, drinking tea, and hey, and I'm saying we're going to make it, we're going to make it. I said, but let's talk about what we're going to do. We're going to pivot. They said, what are we going to do? We're going to look at what our strengths are. Our strengths are we have thousands of customers that we've been servicing. You know, this company's been servicing for 65 years. I said, what else can we service them with? Right now, they can't find gloves. They can't find, sanitizer. They can't find all these things. Let's call them and tell them that we're going to supply them with all those things. I said, so get on the phone, start calling. Sure enough, we started calling, and then now I stepped back because I have such international relationships. I started calling people in China. Saying, I need gloves, I need face masks, I need all these things. And I said, I want them flown here. So we found all the things that our customer need, flew them in on FedEx, okay? And within 2 weeks, we were in stock.
And a new business.
And a new business.
Look at that.
Absolutely.
And the employees within 2 weeks, they were running through the office trying to get everything delivered, and attitudes were great. They said, oh my God, our sales by month 3 were higher than before COVID.
Wow. I love a good shift pivot. And let me tell you, that leads me to my next question. So we can't sit here and say as a business leader, right, that you're not a part of your community because you are in fact a part of your community. So how can businesses play a role in advocating for communities' well-being and resilience during this post-election transition?
You know, the fact that, a lot of the sources of funds are not there, we're probably the ones who need to step up and help fill some of those voids. It's not fair to them. We as a country made them dependent on those organizations.
Yeah.
So now we're just going to pull the rug with no notice. What day of the week was that fair? It's not. So I think that the organizations that are successful need to do more. They're going to have to do more for now. You know, one of my favorite saying, we've learned how to save ourselves.
Absolutely.
And I've always said that. My first company, I had no DE&I when I was Hardy Bottling. Nobody came to me because I was a black female. They only came to me because I was the best. And that's the truth.
Wow.
I could demonstrate to them how we were going to save them money. So if I packed your product, I could show Arizona Iced Tea that we could pack their product here in Memphis, Tennessee, and ship it all the way to California and cut that packer out. And we did because of our container.
Yep.
So we loaded their product in the container, and they repositioned to California, got Arizona stuff off, and sent it on to China.
You focus on solving problems.
That's right. You focus on solving problems.
I love that.
So no, you can. But you have to have a positive attitude. Once you start feeling sorry for yourself, you're using your energy, right? It's negative energy. You only have so much energy.
Yeah.
Don't invest it in the negative.
That's good. I'd just like for you to tell us, you said that businesses who can should do more. Can you give them an example of what that might look like?
I had a young lady yesterday that I was interviewing, and she wasn't right for me. Okay, she wasn't right for our company. I run entrepreneurial companies, which takes a different energy. If you don't wake up jumping out of the bed, running 50 miles an hour, you're not right for my company.
Right.
Because I will pass you in the hallway and you'll say, "What is she on?" Okay.
Yeah.
But I really felt that she had a good skill set. And so I reached out to someone another company that I knew that had a need. And I said, "Hey, look, there's a young lady who I think would be perfect for that position that you called me about and asked me that I have any." This was 2 months ago, okay?
Yeah.
And I told the young lady I was going to do it. She said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah." Someone reached out to him. And I said, "I'll get back with you." Because I thought she would be a perfect fit. And the way she talks, the way she goes about business was more in line with their culture, a little bit more laid back. And I think that when we have connections and things that we can do, there's a group that we support called Pure Academy. It's the one that they use football as their teaching mechanism, and a very successful organization. Their kids have all gone to college and all have their different levels of success. That type of organization, he always has some kind of need. So I just responded to his email this morning. And I asked him, "Do you need more of this?"
Right.
And he said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, we'll figure out how to get it there." And so, give what you can. You don't have to give what everybody else give.
That's good.
Yeah.
I love that she said, think outside of your box.
Yeah.
Whether that's going to be lending some talent that you no longer need or may not be a good fit for your organization.
Or helping people find opportunities.
Yeah,
Your
help people
network.
find opportunities.
Yeah.
Look at your community. See how you and your employee base can serve, whether it's 2 of you all or 5,000 of you. Find ways that you can serve. Sometimes acts of service are way more valuable than money. And if you have money and not time, then give the money.
That's
But
exactly.
whatever you can
But
do,
whatever you
serve.
can get, whatever you're comfortable with. But nothing is not an option.
Nothing is not an option. I love that. To whom much is given, much more is required. So as we get ready to close, I'd like for you to speak directly to your camera.
Okay.
And I'd like for you to give some advice to emerging leaders. I want you to tell them what you would offer on fostering resilience and inclusivity in their organizations.
I would say resilience. I've talked a lot today about the negative. Don't focus on the negative. Find something that you can win at. You may need to pivot if you're only going after very large companies. Take a step back and look at other companies that you've not gone after before. I was advising this young man yesterday. He's in the cleaning business. And I was trying to find him a mentor. And I told him it's not my business, but I know people in that space. And I said, "It's time for you to pivot." And I said, "I want you to keep your eye on what's going on with current events." And he said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" I said, "Resilience." I said, "There's going to be some things going to happen that's going to create opportunities. Not that, I feel bad that it happened, but if you look at some of the things that the administration is doing right now, when people are pulled out of our country unexpected, all of a sudden those roles need to be filled.
Yes.
So he's going to have to watch those roles and be prepared to step in and take on that opportunity. And so we're going to have to be a lot more watchful, a lot more mindful. We're going to have to actually communicate more. Rokita said that earlier, communication. We're going to have to communicate more with each other. We're going to have to know each other better. From a standpoint, if I know that you're in the cleaning business or you're in the temp business and so on, and I see this group come to me and I say, "Wait a minute, I can connect these 2 dots." We're going to have to ask our community to help us connect more dots. We're going to have to support family first. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I'm not talking about my sisters and brothers. I'm talking about my sisters and brothers in the broader community. So we're going to have to look at Shelby County and say, how do we protect our own first? And then worry about who's on the outside. I think a lot of times we give a lot of our opportunities to people outside of Shelby County. I think we're going to have to start looking, how do we protect our own first? We need more of that.
That's good.
That,
And
that,
while
that
she's
helps with resilience. If you win one time, it makes you feel so good. It makes you feel you can win the second time.
Yeah. Look for small wins. And I love what she said is while she's saying specifically to this community, Shelby County, you need to do the same thing for your community, whatever it's
Absolutely.
called.
That's
You're
right.
going to have to protect what you all have. And that's going to take some strategic collaborations.
Right.
Don't try to solve it in and of yourself. Look for partnership. Look for people to walk alongside you and be open to hearing the voice of your customers and the community.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
very
you.
Carolyn, we really appreciate you being here, and we look forward to having you back soon. Thank you all for joining us today on this episode of Masters of Momentum. We'll see you next time.